Hey guys, tonight we're venturing into the misty, rumbling heart of Iceland's volcanic fields, where legends say a Viking once mistook a mountain of molten rock for a roaring dragon. Picture that, a burly warrior in fur-lined boots, staring up at a column of ash and thinking, well, I guess it's time to slay that thing. You're probably thinking you wouldn't survive 5 minutes in a place like that, and honestly, you might be right. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where and when you're tuning in from. I love knowing that I'm helping you drift off, wherever you are in the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drag your feet across a patch of cracked earth, warm to the touch like a kitchen stove left on by mistake. Every breath tastes like metal and smoke, tinged with that unsettling tang of sulfur that makes your nose wrinkle. The sky is a bruised grey, clouds hanging low as if they've given up on being fluffy and now only want to rain ash on your head. Somewhere, in the distance, a low growling rumble makes your chest vibrate as if a god is stirring in his sleep. You pause, blinking, feeling the heat radiate from beneath your boots. It's a heat that makes your eyebrows sweat, like standing next to a pizza oven, except the pizza is made of rocks and molten lava. You picture yourself in the boots of a Viking warrior, grimy, tired, and convinced that the mountain-belching steam and fire must be some sort of monstrous dragon, its belly gurgling with rage. Back then, anything unexplained was either divine or deadly, and maybe it still is. You rub your hands together, feeling the grit and grime work into your skin like a primitive exfoliant. Every gust of wind brings with it a hint of brimstone and the promise of a fiery demise. Some say that this very volcano erupted so fiercely it blackened the skies for months, disrupting trade routes and even messing with harvests halfway across Europe. But then again, some historians still debate whether that particular eruption was really the cause of the so-called year without a summer, or whether the Viking who saw it was just sleep-deprived and seeing things. Because, let's be honest, you'd probably see a dragon too if you'd spent a month at sea on a diet of dried fish and questionable ale. As you walk, the ground trembles beneath you, each step sending a shiver up your spine. It's like nature's own massage chair, except less relaxing and more like being politely threatened by the planet itself. You pause at the base of a rocky outcrop. A plume of steam hisses out, and for a moment it looks exactly like the curled neck of a dragon, scales glistening in the fading light. You can almost hear the wings unfurl, a low echoing hiss that tickles your eardrums. In the distance you spot a crude carving in the stone, a warrior's helmet, scratched into the rock by a trembling hand. Maybe it was meant as a warning, or maybe it was just someone with too much time and a sharp rock. The wind shifts again, carrying with it the scent of scorched earth, old iron, and something else, something like singed hair. You imagine the Viking standing here centuries ago, staring into that same darkness, sword in hand, convinced that with a single strike he could silence a dragon forever. And you, now, standing in his place, can't help but wonder, would you have done the same? Would you have stood your ground, sword raised, or would you have bolted at the first whiff of burning socks? It's comforting to know that even then, people made mistakes, like thinking a mountain was a dragon. It makes you feel a little better. About that time, you mistook a plastic bag for a squirrel. But tonight, you're here not to fight, but to drift, letting the echoes of the past guide you deeper into the folds of sleep. Let that warm hum of the earth seep into your bones. Let the ancient heat lull you, the way the Vikings might have let the crackle of embers guide them to rest after a long, confusing day of fighting imaginary monsters. And if you find yourself smiling at the absurdity of it all, that's perfect. Because, in the end, even the fiercest warrior needs a moment to laugh before sleep takes over. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, trying to find a patch of ground that doesn't feel like it might collapse into a bubbling pit of magma. The sky above you darkens, thick clouds rolling in like a woolen blanket, scratchy and damp. A low rumble churns in the distance, the kind of sound that could be mistaken for Thor's hammer cracking open the heavens. You squint through the smoky air and suddenly you see it. A dense column of black smoke spiraling skyward, curling like the tail of a mythic serpent. Your heart picks up its pace, a gentle drumbeat against your ribs. You can almost picture the Viking warrior from earlier, standing where you stand now, eyes wide as dinner plates, convinced that the gods themselves had birthed a colossal dragon in this land of fire and ice. His breath would have caught in his throat, a mixture of awe and dread, and maybe a hint of excitement at the chance to prove himself in battle. You know, historians still argue about whether that warrior really believed he was facing a dragon, or if it was just a tall tale to make him look braver than he actually was. After all, a volcano is already terrifying enough. No need to embellish. But then again, who can blame him? If you saw fire erupt from the earth, wouldn't you think the world had finally gone mad? You take a cautious step forward, the ground, gritty under your boots, and the smell of burning stone invades your nostrils, like someone left a barbecue on high and forgot the meat. Your eyes sting from the haze, and every breath feels like inhaling the embers of a 1,000-year-old campfire. A sudden gust of wind tears through the smoke, revealing a jagged peak in the distance, its crest glowing a molten red, like the angry eye of a monster. You can almost hear it breathe, each exhale a deep, resonant groan that rattles your teeth. It's easy to see how a mind worn down by endless travel, rough seas and nights spent on the cold ground, might leap to the conclusion. This is no ordinary mountain. This is a beast, alive and furious. Your fingers tingle with anticipation, or maybe with the creeping chill that's settled over the land. You glance around, half expecting a group of warriors to emerge from the shadows, shields raised high and axes at the ready. Instead, the only thing that greets you is the relentless sigh of the wind, carrying with it stories half remembered and half invented. You try to steady your breath, drawing it in slow and deliberate, letting the heat settle into your bones. Even now you wonder what it would have been like to stand shoulder to shoulder with those ancient warriors, eyes wide with fear and wonder as they faced down the dragon that was nothing more than the earth venting its fury. The air here goes thick with history, a mix of ash and myth that clings to your skin like an old blanket. And in this haze, you start to see shapes, forms, shadows that might be dragons, or might just be illusions born of too many sleepless nights. You can almost imagine the villagers who lived nearby, huddled together in their wooden homes, staring at that smouldering peak and whispering prayers to every god they knew, hoping their families would be spared. Some might have blamed angry spirits. Others would have pointed to the warrior who claimed to fight dragons and wondered if maybe he'd made things worse. Historians still debate whether the villagers truly believed in that dragon or whether they just needed something, anything, to explain why the world felt so terrifying and unpredictable. Because, let's face it, sometimes a good story is easier to swallow than a messy truth. And so you keep walking, the ground warm and unsteady beneath your feet. Every now and then, the wind shifts, carrying with it the faint echo of a warrior's shout or maybe just the whine of the wind in the rocks. Either way, you let it guide you forward, step by step, into the heart of this smoky, ancient legend. You shuffle your boots across the charred ground, feeling the heat seep through the soles, and suddenly a small hiss rises to greet you, a sharp, sizzling sound, like water on a hot skillet. You glance down and see the rocks themselves exhaling. Steam, a lazy little sigh that curls into the air before disappearing like a magician's trick. It's funny, in a way, that something as solid as stone can sing like bacon on Sunday morning. You reach out a hand, cautious but curious, and let your fingertips hover above the blackened surface. The warmth pulses into your skin, gentle at first, then sharp enough to make you pull back with a tiny yelp. You half expect the rocks to giggle at you for being so jumpy. Back in the day, Vikings probably thought this was the dragon's breath, proof that they'd stumbled on the lair of some slumbering beast. And if you'd lived in a world of monsters and gods, would you have doubted them? After all, the earth here seems to crackle with energy, each stone a silent storyteller of ancient battles and lost treasures. Somewhere in the haze, you swear. You catch the faintest scent of old leather, a shield maybe scorched and abandoned by some unlucky warrior. Or perhaps it's your mind playing tricks on you, mixing memory and myth like a pot of stew left to simmer overnight. You'd think the smell would be worse, but it's actually comforting, like an old library or your grandpa's favorite jacket. You step carefully, every footfall greeted by the hiss of escaping steam. You remember how, just a moment ago, the Villagers' faces looked etched with fear and awe at the same time. Maybe they'd seen a Viking stand right where you're standing now, sword drawn, face painted with determination and a hint of panic. Historians still can't decide if that Viking was a hero or a fool. Some say he faced the volcano like a warrior. Others say he was a cautionary tale about believing your own tall tales. You can't help but chuckle at the idea of a fearless Viking warrior, shaking in his boots at the sound of sizzling rocks. You lift your eyes to the sky, which now glows a sickly orange, as if the sun itself is being slowly roasted for dinner. A gust of wind rips through, carrying with it the scent of scorched earth and old stories. You can almost see shapes in the smoke, twisting forms that might be wings or tails, or the long, spiny backs of dragons. Your fingers twitch as though they remember the grip of a sword, even if you've never held one. It's that ancient muscle memory, passed down through the centuries, like an old song you only half remember. And in that moment, you feel both small and connected to every warrior who ever mistook a hiss of steam for a beast's roar. Somewhere, to your left, a sharp crack splits the air, followed by another burst of steam that sends tiny droplets of water spitting into the sky. You can almost hear a voice, maybe the Vikings, maybe your own, saying, "It's just a volcano." But then again, maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's the place where stories are born, where the line between myth and truth blurs like footprints in the fog. You let the warmth soak into your bones, the hiss and sizzle lulling you like the world's strangest lullaby. You let your mind drift to thoughts of home, maybe to a small fire crackling in the hearth or a soft blanket that smells faintly of lavender. And then, as if on cue, a final hiss rises up, a quiet, contented sigh from the stones themselves. You take it as a sign to keep walking, to keep searching for the dragon that might just be the mountain, and the mountain that might just be a dragon in disguise. The path ahead is littered with jagged stones, each one a silent witness to a time when the earth itself seemed determined to tear open the sky. You tread carefully, each step a delicate negotiation between balance and curiosity. The air tastes full of metal, like licking the edge of a sword, and you can almost imagine the Viking's hand tightening around the hilt as he prepared to face the fiery beast he believed slept beneath these rocks. A shiver runs down your spine, not from the cold, but from the echo of ancient footsteps that still linger in the soil. Every now and then a gust of wind carries a faint tang of sulfur, sharp enough to wrinkle your nose. It's a smell that would have turned even the bravest warrior's stomach, yet it's part of the land's strange, feral beauty. You wonder what that Viking thought when he first saw the glow on the horizon, a molten wound against the darkening sky. Did he grip his shield tighter, muttering prayers to Odin? Or maybe he just laughed, a low, uneasy chuckle that said, "Well, this is new." Historians still can't quite agree. Some think he ran straight at it, brandishing his axe, eager to add a dragon's head to his growing legend. Others suspect he might have paused, knees trembling, wishing he'd stayed home tending goats. Your own knees feel a little wobbly, to be honest. It's one thing to read about volcanoes, and quite another to stand so close that the rocks themselves seem to vibrate with each breath of the mountain. You glance around, half expecting to find a group of warriors, beards bristling, eyes wide with terror or excitement. But there's only the silence, punctuated by the occasional hiss of steam. You let out a slow sigh, the kind that fogs the key air before you. It's almost comforting, like the warmth of a bath after a long day, except this bath is filled with the scalding breath of the underworld. You can't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. Here you are tiptoeing through a dragon's lair that's really just the earth being, well, dramatic. And then, as if the mountain wants to remind you who's boss, a low rumble rises beneath your feet. The ground shudders, a tremor that rattles the rocks and sends a few pebbles skipping down the slope like mischievous children. You catch your breath, heart fluttering like a startled bird. "Easy," you whisper, though you're not sure if you're talking to yourself or the mountain. You wonder if the Viking said the same thing, trying to calm his racing pulse as he stared at the glowing maw of the volcano. Maybe he believed that if he just held his ground, shield raised, axe at the ready, the mountain would back down. But of course, that's not how volcanoes work. They're like toddlers in a candy store, impossible to reason with, prone to sudden tantrums, The air grows warmer, and for a moment you think you hear a faint roaring sound like a dragon clearing its throat, or maybe it's just your own breath, ragged in the charged air. Historians still debate whether the Viking actually fought anything that day, or if the story grew like a snowball rolling downhill, gathering embellishments and half-truths with every retelling. But in the hush that follows the tremor, you find yourself hoping it was true, hoping he did stand tall against the mountain, if only because it makes for a better story. You move forward, your shadow stretching long and lean across the rocks. The mountain looms ahead, its peak crowned with a halo of ash and fire. You can almost hear the distant clang of steel, the whoosh of an axe slicing through smoke. Every step brings you closer to the heart of the myth, to the place where history and legend blur like heat haze on a summer road. You pause to catch your breath, the air thick with possibilities. You feel a strange comfort in the hiss and rumble, a reminder that the world is alive, unpredictable, and always just a little bit dangerous. And somewhere deep inside, you find yourself smiling, because even if the dragon was just a volcano, it's still one heck of a bedtime story. The heat is relentless now, pressing against your skin like the heavy hand of an over-enthusiastic sauna attendant. You can almost imagine a row of Norsemen in towels, fanning themselves with shields and muttering about the price of admission. Every breath tastes of warm stone and the tang of old metal, like the memory of battles that might have never happened. You let your mind wander as you navigate a winding path, worn smooth by centuries of curious feet and anxious boots. Somewhere, in the swirling haze, a shape emerges, an outcropping of rock that looks suspiciously like the gnarled snout of a sleeping dragon. You pause, half expecting it to yawn and belch out a stream of molten fire. Instead, it just sits there, silently mocking your overactive imagination. You chuckle under your breath, realizing that even the most hardened warrior might have made the same mistake. 1,000 years ago, a Viking might have leaned on his axe, squinting into the haze, certain that dragons' nostrils would flare at any moment. And who could blame him? The mind can play cruel tricks when fear and wonder dance in the same shadows. Historians still can't decide if that Viking actually believed he was facing a beast, or if he was just buying time to steady his nerves. Maybe he wasn't thinking about dragons at all. Maybe he was wondering if his goats had been properly locked up back at the longhouse. After all, no matter how brave you are, a man's got to think of dinner. The air grows thicker, clinging to you like an old cloak. You imagine the weight of that cloak, stitched from the tales of every warrior who'd ever swung a sword at shadows. A trickle of sweat slides down your neck, and for a moment you pretend it's the sting of a dragon's breath, just to make things interesting. In the distance, a plume of smoke rises, twisting like the spine of some ancient serpent. You watch. It dance, hypnotic and slow, the way a snake might move if it were made of dreams and nightmares. A grin tugs at the corner of your mouth. Even the mountain is trying to put on a show tonight. You shuffle forward, each step deliberate, as though the rocks themselves might give way. The mountain groans, a low, resonant sound that echoes through the stones like a bass drum at a particularly somber Viking funeral. You wonder if the old warrior heard that same sound, heart hammering in his chest, wondering if he'd stumbled into a monster's lair or just an especially moody volcano. A stray gust of wind ruffles your hair, carrying with it the scent of something old and worn, like ancient parchment or a half-forgotten tale. You close your eyes and let it wash over you, imagining the Viking standing here, the same wind tangling in his beard. Maybe he'd laugh at your soft boots and your fancy notions of dragons and bedtime stories. Get on with it, he might growl, voice like gravel. Either fight the beast or go home. And you'd smile back because the beast isn't really a beast at all. It's a story waiting to be told, a legend waiting to be dreamed. Historians still puzzle over whether that Viking ever left this place or if he became part of the mountain, one more echo in the steam and stone. But you know the truth. He's still here waiting in the cracks and crevices, ready to leap out the next time someone wanders too close to the dragon's breath. The mountain rumbles again, softer this time, like a cat settling down to sleep. You take a deep breath, the heat a familiar friend now. You let the hiss of steam wrap around you, a lullaby only the mountain can sing, and you step forward, one foot after the other, chasing a legend that might have been born in fear. But now, feels more like a promise of adventure than a threat. Your footfalls sound hollow now, echoing off the stone walls like the drumbeat of some ancient ceremony. The ground grows darker, patches of obsidian veins weaving their way through the earth like a blackened spider's web. You pause for a moment, the heat radiating upward as if the mountain is exhaling its secrets. The air tastes like burnt metal, and you wonder what sort of dinner party the Viking expected to find here. Surely not a dragon with a polite dinner invitation. More likely, he envisioned a battle cry, a shield raised against a moor of flame. Historians still debate whether that shield was real, or just a metaphor for all the fears he carried inside. You imagine him standing where you are now, sweat clinging to his beard, eyes squinting into the glow that flickered in and out like a dying candle. Maybe he called it a dragon because that was easier than admitting he didn't understand the Earth's anger. After all, when in doubt, name it after the thing you fear the most. Your own pulse is a steady rhythm, a counterpoint. To the hiss and rattle of the mountain's breath, a gentle vibration hums under your boots, as though the earth itself is thinking, plotting maybe, or just sighing in its sleep. You find yourself humming along, the tune a lullaby to match the mountain's mood. The shadows grow thicker as you descend a narrow pass, the walls pressing close like the ribs of some long-dead beast. You drag your fingers along the rough surface, the stone cool despite the heat that lingers everywhere else. It's a small mercy, like finding a splash of cold water on a hot day. And then, almost too soft to notice, you hear the faintest trickle of water. It's the sort of sound that makes you pause mid-step, listening with every inch of your body. The idea of water in this place, a place of fire and fury, feels like finding a flower blooming in the ashes. You grin despite yourself, wondering if the Viking ever heard the same sound, and if it made him pause to wonder too. Historians are still uncertain whether he drank from that water, or if he feared it might be cursed, like everything else in this land of smoke and legend. Some say he filled his helmet and toasted his gods. Others claim he let it be, unwilling to risk another layer of curses on top of everything else. You lean down and cup your hands, gathering the thin stream that dances between the rocks. It's lukewarm but clean, and as you sip, you taste the minerals of 1,000 years, the patience of stone and the laughter of old rain. You smile at the absurdity of it all. Here you are, sharing a drink with a ghost who might have once mistaken a volcano for a dragon. The mountain growls again, a low, half-hearted sound, like a yawn from a bored cat. You can't help but chuckle, your breath a cloud of mist in the thick air. Nice try, you murmur, though you're not sure who you're talking to. The Viking? The mountain? Or maybe just the fear that lives in the back of your mind. You stand and wipe your hands on your pants, feeling the grit of the earth clinging to your palms. The path ahead opens into a wide chamber, a natural amphitheater that hums with a quiet energy. It feels like a place where stories gather, waiting for a voice to set them free. And as you step forward, the mountain seems to exhale, a long, slow sigh that settles over you like a blanket. The air is heavy with the scent of scorched earth, and yet there's something oddly comforting about it, like the Viking's ghost might be patting you on the back, telling you that you've earned a rest, at least for now. You smile into the darkness, your heart beating a little easier. After all, even the fiercest dragons need to sleep sometimes, and maybe, just maybe, that's all the mountain was ever trying to do. The chamber feels like the inside of a slumbering giant, all warm breath and slow rhythms. You can almost hear a snore, rolling low and steady through the walls, each exhale a reminder that the mountain is very much alive and very much at peace. You'll fool. Shuffle a little deeper, feeling the floor slope beneath you in a gentle curve. Shadows dance across the uneven walls, shapes that tease your mind with the possibility of hidden creatures, maybe a dragon's tail curled around itself, or the long-forgotten bones of some unlucky explorer. A faint trickle of laughter escapes your lips, somewhere between relief and wonder. Historians still can't agree whether that Viking ever saw this place, or if his imagination stopped at the first hiss of steam. Some argue he might have turned back, a sensible man knowing when to cut his losses. Others claim he pressed on, determined to see the heart of the so-called beast. You like to think he kept going, curiosity outweighing common sense. The air smells of earth and time, like the pages of an old book left open too long. You breathe it in, feeling each grain of dust settle in your lungs. A shiver runs down your spine as you imagine the Vikings' heavy boots scuffing the same ground, maybe carrying a shield or a torch or a pocketful of half-baked prayers. A glint catches your eye, a shard of something metal half buried in the dirt. You kneel to pick it up, turning it over in your hands. It's rough, almost rusted through, but you can make out a faint etching, a mark that might have once been a rune or a family crest. You smile, a private moment between you and a man who might have mistaken a volcano for a dragon. Your fingers trace the lines, the ridges worn smooth by time and the weight of the earth pressing down. You can almost feel the Viking's hand overlapping yours, calloused and sure, gripping the same piece of metal. Maybe he clutched it like a talisman, a tiny shield against the darkness. Historians are still arguing, of course, about whether that scrap of metal is real or just another relic of 1,000 bedtime stories. Some claim it's proof of a warrior's last stand. Others think it's just a bit of discarded iron from a traveling tinker. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the middle, a half-forgotten scrap of a larger tale. You stand and pocket the metal, feeling its weight settle against your leg. A reminder that even the smallest things can carry the biggest stories. The path curves again, leading you to a place where the ceiling rises high overhead. The walls glow faintly, alive with mineral veins that catch the dim light and reflect it back like 1,000 tiny stars. It feels like you've stumbled into the night sky itself, laid out beneath the mountain's roof. You pause, head tilted back, the Viking's presence a whisper at your side. You imagine him standing beside you, staring at the same sparkling ceiling, his helmet tilted just so, his beard catching the glow like a lantern. Maybe he'd mutter something about Odin's beard, or maybe he'd just grunt in appreciation. A warm breeze stirs the air, carrying with it the scent of old campfires and dried herbs. You can almost hear the laughter of a group of men gathered around a flickering flame, telling stories of dragons and gods and other monsters that might have only lived in their heads. Your steps slow, your breath falling in rhythm with the mountain's gentle sighs. The heat no longer feels oppressive. Instead, it's a gentle embrace, a reminder that even in a place of fire there can be moments of calm. You take another step forward, and the stars above seem to wink at you, as if to say, "You've come this far, don't stop now." And so you keep going, the Viking's memory at your back, the mountain's song in your ears. After all, you didn't come here just to turn around. You came to find the dragon, or at least the truth that hides behind its myth. And even if all you find is a warm rock and a rusty scrap of metal, you'll have a story to tell. And sometimes that's worth more than gold. The floor grows smoother now, as though the mountain itself decided to lend you a hand, or maybe just got tired of tripping you up. You slide your feet forward, listening to the soft hush of gravel and dust, the sound like the hush of a story you're not quite sure you want to hear. You feel the air shift again, cooler now, carrying with it the scent of rain that has never fallen, like the memory of water trapped in stone. You close your eyes and imagine the Viking pausing here, his chest rising and falling in the rhythm of someone who's just realized they're not fighting a dragon at all, but themselves. Historians still argue about that, of course. Whether he knew in that moment that the dragon he'd been chasing was only a mountain sigh. Some say he charged in anyway, determined to wrestle the unknown into something he could call victory. Others claim he stood there, staring at the dark heart of the mountain, and finally understood that some battles can't be won, only accepted. You like to think it was a little of both, that he lifted his sword and then let it drop, a gesture, half proud, half defeated. That maybe he laughed at himself, because what else could you do when the world refused to be simple? Your own laugh echoes softly, and the mountain's walls catch the sound and hold it for a moment before letting it go. You think about the Viking's shield, whether he left it here as a marker of his folly or carried it back down the mountain to tell a tale no one would believe. You imagine him telling his friends about the day he fought a dragon, only to find that dragons weren't what they used to be. Maybe they'd buy him a beer, slap his back, call him a hero anyway. Because that's what we do when stories get too complicated. We simplify them, wrap them in laughter and legends, and let them fear. The ground beneath you trembles, a slow, even heartbeat that seems to say, "You've made it." The chamber widens and you see the final prize, a ring of stones at the center arranged like an ancient crown. They're blackened, cracked, but still standing, a testament to the stubbornness of both rock and man. You step into the ring, the heat radiating up through your boots, and you swear you can almost see the Viking's ghost standing in the middle, arms folded, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "Took you long enough," he seems to say. You grin back at him, the weight of the mountain pressing in, and the air tastes like every story you've ever heard. The walls sigh, a sound like the exhale of a giant, and you feel your own shoulders drop, because in the end, the dragon wasn't a monster. It was a mountain, and it was waiting for you to realize that. And maybe that's all any of us need, sometimes to stare into the dark and see that the thing we feared was just another piece of the world we walk through every day. You take a slow breath, feeling the heat settle into your bones. Your eyelids flutter, heavy with the weight of too many stories and not enough sleep. The Viking's laughter fades, a low rumble that's more of a memory than a sound now. You stand for a moment longer, letting the hush settle around you. The air thick with the comfort of having reached the end of something, then you let your breath out in a long, slow sigh, like the mountains sigh, and close your eyes. The darkness behind your eyelids is warm and kind, like the blanket your mother tucked around you on a stormy night. The world grows quiet, the shadows stretching and softening until they're just shades of the same gentle dark. Your heartbeat slows, the last of your thoughts drifting like ash in the air, and somewhere in that space between waking and dreaming, you hear the Viking's voice, soft and close. Rest now. The dragon is sleeping. Your breath evens out, a smile still, playing at your lips. End of script. Sweet dreams.